Bonjour, Kinamagene Ireland Adishnikas, and welcome to today's reading lesson. Today's episode, Integrating Multiple Sources, Day 1. When using multiple sources, you're going to look for key information from each text. Then you combine the information to get a better understanding of the topic. This will become very clear, particularly as you move your way through middle school and into high school, and especially in college, is that you can't just look at one source and say, yep, this is all the information I need. You may and sometimes need dozens of sources, depending on the level at which you're writing and the depth in which you want to go. And this is good because one source may leave out a various amount of information. Some sources are also not as good as other sources, especially if you're using the internet. There are many examples where a topic or keyword is used and it's not at all reliable information, and in often cases, misinformation. So to show examples of this today, we're going to discuss 3 different articles, even though there's 2 on this page. You don't necessarily have to write this in, about the Detroit Tigers baseball team. Our first source is Wikipedia, and Wikipedia is a good starting source. And why I say starting source is that because anybody can edit it, sometimes you get questionable information, although Wikipedia has taken steps to mitigate that problem. But if you go all the way to the bottom and you look down, you can start seeing footnotes, and there's a lot of them in here. You could actually go back and find way down here all the footnotes. So now I could go and actually check the legitimate source. And that's a good idea because then you're seeing the source material, maybe even a primary source, and not worried about whether it's somebody misstating something. So let's look at the Wikipedia page, which is ginormous. So we're not going to read this to you. You're always welcome to Google Detroit Tigers history and check out the Wikipedia page on your own. But if you look here, we have a table of contents. That's a long page. So you can see a lot of history. As we scroll through it, we see about their original days in the Western League, their first Major League Baseball season in 1901. Then the era Ty Cobb. If you've ever read Hannes and Me, one of those that's kind of set when they partially in Detroit when they play the 1909 World Series against the Pirates. And then we continue, and it's broken down into years and 2 years, and you see a period of success in the 40s, the war years, now a long drought where they went 21 years of not playing good baseball overall. And then you get into, you see the 68 World Series champions. And then you see where they're still pretty successful, and then they start declining. And they start getting better, once I was born. And you start seeing written about that. The 84 World Series. It's one of the earliest World Series I remember personally. Very much remember the 87 ALS championship season. I could talk to you about that one. You can see about the Detroit Tigers who hit a lot of home runs, didn't win much. Moving to a new ballpark, to Comerica Park, some really bad years, and then a rebirth. And you see where they were division winners, and it starts talking about different years. The best seasons as a team, and you get a lot of data and information about nicknames and rivalries, attendance at Comerica Park, different logos. So there's a lot of information here. You could spend a fair amount of time, and you can see that we're at 500 and some sources right here. And if you hover over, you could actually just simply go there from the Baseball Hall of Fame. And what I'd like to really highlight is notice it tells you the date on which you access the information. That is something that as you move further in your education, when you have to start creating citations pages, you're going to need that information, but we're not there yet today. So let's look at another source, the Encyclopedia Detroit. You can see it mentions the Western League and then how it becomes professional. And you could see there's a paragraph about Ty Cobb, 30s and 40s, not being so good in the 60s, skips some time. And it looks like generally this article ends in the early 20 teens. And although I remember it well, you can see that there's just not as much information here as part of the Encyclopedia of Detroit. Now let's look at one more source. This one is from MajorLeagueBaseball.com, MLB.com, and it's broken down into sections here based on the calendar. And because the Tigers are old, it goes back a long ways. And you see a lot of little tidbits about different years going down. So in some ways, there are parts, it has probably more years mentioned than Wikipedia, but it may not go as deep as some of the others. And you can see as we get into the 2000s, we have more and more content. And while the Tigers may not have been as good as they were if you look back to 1984 or 68, where it's just a small paragraph, years that they were very good and won World Series titles, this source seems to be more well suited for recent years. And it does not yet include 2021. So if we go back to our original worksheet that we were talking about, and again, you're not filling this in, even if you're in the physical classroom, you can find key information on both. And you could start to take this and put it together if you were writing a history of the Detroit Tigers. Would those three sources be good enough? Probably not. You could use those references that are displayed in Wikipedia. I'm just going to scroll all the way down here. You could use these references. So if I wanted to look, Tigers are happy to avoid making history. And I can find the New York Times article. It allows me to sign in, but I don't need to sign in for today. And there's the article about the Tigers that year that lost a lot of baseball games. So as you become a good researcher, you're going to want to start evaluating the sources, what has the information you need, and what's lacking. Does it have links to verify its information or to dig deeper, or is it just words on a page? And that's something you're going to want to be looking at and starting to consider as you move into middle school. There's no actual assignment to this today, other than to have viewed this video. Tomorrow, you'll be comparing a book and a movie. So without further ado, have a mental gijigad, minwa, bamapi.